The woman in your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine B. Holtz and I'm your host. And for today's show I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a commentary. But before I start, I want to wish everybody a happy and joyous new year. One filled with good health, peace of mind, continued prosperity, and loving relationships. 2013 has been so heavy for me that I'm glad it's over, and I'm looking forward to 2014 being a little bit lighter. Although, as many of my listeners and viewers know, I have been involved very deeply and very intensely with the Andy Lopez Coalition. Andy Lopez was a young boy who was shot and killed by one of our deputy sheriffs here in Sonoma County. And, you know, I'm in the studio by myself, so if I move back and forth, I'm changing pictures, I'm switching, I'm doing all kinds of things. So if I move out of the screen a little bit, at least you'll understand. Well, first of all, I would like to give us, the listeners and viewers, just a little bit of an overview. On October 22nd, 2013, Andy Lopez, a young 13-year-old boy in the Roseland area here in Sonoma County on Moreland Avenue, was shot and killed by Deputy Sheriff Eric Gelhaus. And what happened was, it's not clear, but young Andy was walking in a field by Moreland Avenue carrying a toy gun. I believe it was an AK-47, kind of a copy of it. One of those guns that the kids play. They do paintball, and they play all kinds of games with it. He was walking on private property, and nobody knows what happened or what the reason was, but this deputy sheriff claims that he saw him, became frightened because it looked like he had an automatic weapon in his hand. Within 10 seconds, actually 3 seconds after he made the call to the office for help, within the next 10 seconds, 7 bullets went into this young body. Not only did 7 bullets go into his body, but a few ricocheted into other people's homes, which is very dangerous. And also what happened is after he was shot, and the first one, I have to say, went from kind of his hip right up to his heart and killed him instantly. But then the 6 other bullets were put into this young body. But after that, the deputy sheriff ran over and handcuffed this young boy while he was dead and bleeding. And it just, to me, it just was unheard of that something like that could happen in our community. And what I want to do is I want to flash a picture here of young Andy. This is Andy Lopez, 13 years old. And I want to dedicate this show to young Andy and to his family. And I know, I can't imagine, as a mother, as a grandmother, I just can't imagine what the feelings must have been like, particularly when his mother first found out that her son had been killed. I mean, I can't imagine it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flash a picture on the screen. And what happened for me is when I heard about it, I was so shocked and so stunned. And then I found out there was going to be a meeting being held, that people were going to gather and get together and try to do something. And I thought, well, I'll go down. I'm a journalist, and I'll go down and I'll see what I can do. And when I start hearing the story and I start hearing what happened, I just recognized I could not turn the other cheek. I could not turn away. I had to involve myself. Why did I have to involve myself? Well, my compassion and my empathy was so strong, I couldn't believe it. And then about, maybe a week or so later, I ended up going to an event with the North Bay organizing project here in Sonoma County, and I met the mother, Sujay Lopez, and the father of Andy Lopez. And I looked in the mother's eyes, and I have to tell you, the pain that I saw, all I could say to myself was, thank you, Great Spirit, for not putting something like this into my life. Although I have to share with you that my dear friend Valerie Barber's son Jesse Hamilton was killed several years ago, and I went through that with her, and I knew how horrible it was what she went through. And I know that there was no justice for her son, which wasn't surprising, because we've had, up to when Jesse got killed, we had about 54 killings in our community where nobody was charged. It was considered acting according to protocol. And I'd like to see that protocol, that they're allowing all these shootings to happen. I mean, it's a sad day when you live in a community. It's kind of scary. You wonder, well, how can you trust the police? How can you trust the sheriff when these things are happening? I mean, that's the biggest problem, that the trust level in our community is really going down. Well, anyway, after I looked into her eyes and I saw this horrible, horrible pain, I said to her, Shujay, as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, I will stand with you, and I will get other women to stand with you. Well, I had no idea how I was going to get other women to stand. I mean, I start going to the coalition's meeting. I have to say there's a man by the name of Jonathan Milrod who's running the meetings, and I have to do a shout out for him. He's very dedicated. The meetings have been happening every week. And I kept thinking, what can I do? And then suddenly they were asking about different actions, and I stood up and I said, I've often had this vision of mothers just marching with signs saying, stop killing our children, stop making war. And everybody just thought it was a great idea. And I said, okay, so they asked me if I would head it. And I said, I'll head it the first time, because I am a believer that you start an action, you get people involved, and you turn it over, because then it keeps getting new and new and new energy. But again, I still didn't know what I was going to do. I knew it had to do with mothers. I knew that it was going to be a protest. I didn't know if it would be a mothers marching. I didn't know if we'd go to the city council or the board of supervisors. It was kind of up in the air for me. But then what happened, which was very interesting, is I saw this picture in the Press Democrat, and I'm going to flash it on the screen. And remember, I'm moving back and forth. So here's the picture. That was Sergey. And when I saw that picture, I said to myself, oh my God, look at her. There's a white sheet draped over the coffin. That's little Andy inside, and that's Sergey who's holding the casket. I think, to be honest with you, I really think she restrained herself, because the feeling that I got is she probably wanted to go in that casket with her son. And so I looked at it and I thought, first of all, I recommitted myself. I says, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a Mother's March. But then when I'm looking at this picture, I decided it should be Mothers in White. And that's how it was born. It was born Mothers in White. And what we did was our first action, which was really very, very, very interesting, was very nerve-wracking. And what happened is 7 of us showed up, and not one word in the Press Democrat. Nothing, not even a picture. I have to say, on the next round, it was a little bit different. It really was. And so we went to the Board of Supervisors. There were no pictures taken, but it was a very powerful event. And what happened is that the Board of Supervisors has a meeting at 2 o'clock, and then they collect all these cards if you want to speak. And we decided we would put all our cards, or the Mothers in White would put their cards in order. And what happened is they pulled it out of order, and when we found that out, we all stood, and we just stood through the whole meeting until each and every one of us talked. And it was passionate. It was very passionate. But like I said, this was the picture right here that really inspired me to move forward and to do something, and not to be intimidated by it. Because when you're protesting or you're doing anything like that, it's very intimidating. It's extremely intimidating. It really is. And so that's kind of the overview of why I've got involved. And then there was the first protest. Like I said, we went to the Board of Supervisors, and I think it had a tremendous impact on them. And I want to do a shout out particularly to Shirley Zane and to Susan Gorin, because they have been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And one of the things that happened at our second protest, which I have more pictures to show later on, is that they really supported the effort and came down to the audience and said hello to us and really appreciated us being here. Well, a lot of things have happened around the Andy Lopez situation ever since there's been protests, there's been marches. The young people particularly have really come out in full force for their friend. In fact, I was absolutely amazed when I began to find out how many friends this young boy had. And what's so interesting, he was what I would consider a good boy. He's kind of like my grandson. He was in the band, he got good grades. I even understand that he had goals that he wanted to go into the Marine Corps. I mean, here, our country even lost somebody that would have served very well. Not that I'm for wars, but he did have somewhat of a plan. He was also a good friend, very, very supportive of his friends. And so they built this wonderful, wonderful monument for him. And then on January 3rd, we got the phone call that the memorial was actually burned down. Now they say that it was not arson. Some people think it was, some people think it wasn't. But what I choose to do is go along with the report from the fire department. If it happens again, then we know it was arson. But accidents do happen. There were a lot of candles. But what's so amazing is that even though it was burned down, the community came out and they built a brand new monument, a brand new memorial, and I want to flash this. It's even better than the last one. I mean, it's so beautiful. And what was really beautiful about it was seeing the community come out, seeing all the people come out and building this monument and saying that this was not going to stop them. This was not going to deter them. And one of the things that I found that I thought was really interesting is the kids, the young people. When I say young people, I mean around Andy's age, between 13 probably and 17, and there's a few older leaders. But what was so amazing is when the love and the compassion and the feeling that went into building this monument. And look at this beautiful picture that I found that I really think is the essence of everything that we're trying to do, and that is to stop police brutality and justice for Andy Lopez. Well, there's been a lot of talk about justice and what does it mean? What does justice mean in this community around this young boy's shooting? I mean, it's a big question. It's a huge question, and oftentimes people get confused. And what do they mean by justice? Well, the first thing, of course, is I want to see this deputy sheriff, I want to see him tried in a court of law. I can't say that he's innocent or guilty. I'm sure he came up with his reasons. But I think if you have a jury trial and you have a jury of your peers and everybody hears the story and the public can see and hear what happened, I think it eases us a little bit. And I think that's very, very important. And that's what people are calling for. That's what they mean by justice. They want to see Eric Gelhaus charged. I'm not sure what they'll charge him with, but at least at the point where there's a trial that happens. And a friend of mine, Thomas David Bonifil, who's a strong activist and has a lot to say, and this is Women's Spaces, but I have to say, when it comes to writing and some of the things that have been said, Thomas has really done a great job. And so what he means, or what we mean, because I agree with him, is what does justice mean? Well, it means that the elected officials will engage in conduct that supports the community, that wants a thorough investigation, wants a jury trial by the peers, and also to develop what they call a citizens review board. But a friend of mine by the name of Mary Moore made it a little bit deeper. She says not just a citizens review committee, but a citizens oversight in other words, to watch what's going on in our police department and sheriff's department. I mean, it sounds like they're running a little bit wild. And this deputy sheriff that shot young Andy, oh my goodness, he was a trainer. He was an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran. I mean, who knows what was going on in his mind that day, or what he even saw, or what he even feared. But all that has to come out. And it means, justice for Annie means that a law enforcement officer who chooses to shoot a boy without giving him time to even turn around, this will simply not be tolerated. And this person will be taken to the task and going and having a trial by a jury by his peers. And also it means that the sheriff himself has to make sure that there is a fair investigation. And that's kind of what it means. And also that we as a citizens are no longer going to tolerate this kind of activity. I mean, we have to be very careful. There's a movie that I saw, it's called Judgment at Nuremberg, and I was shocked when I watched it in light of what was happening with the Andy Lopez thing, because if we're not careful, if we don't bring justice, if we don't stop brutality and bring justice to Andy Lopez in this situation, folks, I'm telling you, we're in big trouble. Because if they can do this, if this can happen to this young boy, I guarantee you it can happen to any young boy. I realize that what's happening in our country is a lot of targeting with Latino and African American young men. We all know that, and it's disgusting to me. But the point is, there was an old saying, or someone wrote during World War II, first they came for the communists, I wasn't a communist, then they came for the socialists, I wasn't a socialist, and he goes all the way down, then they came for me and nobody was left. Well, first they come for the Latino young people, then and then the African American, or we can even switch it around, African American, Latino, and next they came for the Asian, and next they came for the Native American, and then next they came for the whites, and here I was all alone. I mean, that's what we have to be careful of. We can't just allow things like this to happen. We have to stop it. I mean, we are militarizing our police department. Is that what we want? I mean, that's not what I want. I didn't grow up like this. I grew up where police, you could talk to them. They knew your name because they were part of your neighborhood. You weren't afraid of them. You wanted to be like them. Now we're scared and we hate them. We call them names. I mean, it's almost like there's this big divide in our community, in our culture, in our world because of some of the brutal stuff that's going on. And it has to stop. Okay, so now let's get into the next thing that we did, and that was that we had the Mothers in White go down on January 7th to the Board of Supervisors, and I have to do a shout out for them. Believe me, they're not perfect. I know they're not perfect, but one thing they did do is they did respect the community, and they had an open meeting. They put no time constraints on us, although they asked us to be courteous of other people. And they said to, try to limit our takes and our talks for 3 minutes. And I mean, I know for myself, I went over a few minutes, but that's okay. It happened. I'm setting up the next picture here, like I told you, that I'm here all alone in the studio. Well, they got some great shots, and I'm going to show you one of the shots here. And this picture is, thank you so much for the Press Democrat for taking this great picture. I'm going to flash it right now on the screen. And this is a new friend of mine, a really powerful woman by the name of Dara McCushion. And like I said, that the picture was taken by the Press Democrat. In fact, I should probably give them credit so that we can see. Well, I can't get it on the screen, but this was taken by the Press Democrat, and that is Dara McCushion that's standing there. And boy, I'll tell you, this woman is really, really powerful. And she gave an excellent presentation, I have to say. And it was very, very passionate, extremely passionate, and she was calling for justice. You know, she herself has a little girl, the most cutest little thing you ever saw, Emily. I mean, if anything I'm grateful for is that Emily came into our lives. I can't wait till she grows up to see how she's going to be. But it was very passionate, and one woman after another came up and spoke her truth and spoke with such passion. I was so proud of her. And so Dara is actually, she helped coordinate the second Women in White. And if you can look in the audience, you can see, I'm going to point here, you can see there are several women. Here's one woman right here. Let's see, where we go, right here. She's in white. There's another woman down here in white, another woman here, another woman here. There was something like, believe it or not, there were something like 70 women in white that showed up. The audience had over 200 people. And what they also did at that day is they also served a second lawsuit against Eric Garhouse and Sonoma County. And that was really riveting. It was so emotional. The lawyer came down and talked to all of us. And it was an amazing, amazing experience for me. So I want to give you one more picture. And here's yours truly sitting right in the audience. And if you can see me, I'm right over here. This is me right there. And this woman here, excuse me, she has a mirror. And the reason that we had mirrors was to have the Board of Supervisors look themselves in a mirror and ask themselves what they're doing. And I'm sitting next to, of all people in the whole world, one of my favorite people, which is Big Man. And Big Man was a former Black Panther, and there he is right there. And what was so interesting is how I got to sit next to him is his wife Carol came over me and said, "Why don't you sit next to Big Man?" So I said, "Sure, I'll sit next to him." Excuse me. So we had quite a turnout. We had over 200 people. Lots of noise, lots of shouting, lots of different things happening, but a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event. So again, I want to show you this picture. Like I said, that's Big Man from, he was a Black Panther. There I am again. And you can see in the whole background, if you look really close, you can see many, 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 many mothers in white. So it was just an amazing turnout. And I want to do a shout out for everybody that showed up. Well, that's a lot to think about. And one of the things that I hope and pray that we think about is, what is justice for Andy Lopez? The only thing I can think of is justice is to have a trial by Mr. Garhouse's peers. I think that's very important. I mean, they're doing investigations. We have to utilize the Citizens Review Board. We have to turn it into an oversight committee so we can make sure that this never happens again. I mean, remember, like I said, if this could happen to Andy Lopez, this could happen to any one of us. Don't think it can't. You know, that's why I encourage people to watch Judgment at Nuremberg. Now, I'm not saying we're there. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying we're there. But what I'm saying is if we're not careful, that's where this country is going to be. And I love my country. I love the fact that we have freedom of speech, that we have a right to bear arms, that we have a beautiful Constitution. We have so many things in place. And if we don't fight to hold on to them, then we're going to lose them. And the way we lose them is by allowing something like this to happen. And here, when you look in this room and you see there were over 200 people here, and that is a pretty big crowd, because in the sales game, they say, for every one person, there's 100 people that are supporting that person. That's why it's important that you take care of any complaints people have, because you don't want them out there bad-mouthing you. Well, that's a lot to think about. An awful lot to think about, an awful lot to digest. And you know, we have to be involved. We have to be involved. Anyway, lots to think about, but that's what Women's Spaces is all about. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm dedicating this show to the Lopez family, Sergio and Sujay. I can never pronounce his name, Rijigo and Sujay Lopez. I'm dedicating this show to them, and my heart goes out, trust me, to not only them, but to the whole community around Moreland Avenue, which is called around the Roseland area, because people are still in a state of shock. Anyway, make sure you watch the papers, and I'm sure you'll see lots of other protests and lots of other actions from the mothers in white and also women in white, women in black. I mean, all of us women have to get out there and say no more. No more killing of our children, no more wars to stop this nonsense. Let's start loving one another. And remember, love all the children as your children. This is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and watching. And once again, happy, happy New Year. May this year be one of the greatest blessings of your life. Of all things, I wish you good health and peace of mind.
In your life, we'll do what you must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. The woman in your life knows simply what is true. She knows a simple way to touch to make you whole now. The woman in your life, she can touch so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life